Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmasso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. It is your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any of our platforms. Reach out to me directly. Email tmasso@thewatchbox.com for pricing. It's important to note that the mid-size Audemars Piguet Royal Oak is almost as old as the Royal Oak itself, as by the late 1970s, we already had a mid-size in the catalog, and there has been something along those lines available to customers ever since. The latest variant, which debuted just last year, the 50th anniversary of the Royal Oak in 2022, is the watch you see here. Well, this is actually a variation on the 15550. This is the 15551, 37 millimeters in stainless steel with diamond set bezel. So the watch is 37 millimeters, the long-running size standard for the mid-size. It's a little bit thinner than its predecessor, the 15450. That was closer to 10 millimeters. This is 9.1 millimeters thick. And in terms of width across the wrist, as with every Royal Oak, there's two ways to measure it. Case alone, it's a delightfully compact 46.5 millimeters, but if you measure these intermediate links, which are called plots, the total distance across the wrist is actually a beefier 49.2, which is why I often say with any Royal Oak, especially on the bracelet, consider it about 2 sizes larger than it is. So think of this more as a 39, and you have more of a sense of how it's going to fit and how it's going to look on the wrist. I often recommend to folks who can't get a jumbo, get one of the 37s. It's going to be the fit you're looking for. Throwing it on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, you can see mid-size describes this watch. It is definitely not petite. It's got a lot of wrist presence because of the integration of bracelet, lug, and case envisioned by original designer Gerald Genta. It reads almost as a full bracelet, a band around the wrist that just happens to have a watch attached. And as Genta considered himself a jewelry designer first and foremost, that is exactly the effect aesthetically he sought to achieve with the Royal Oak when he penned the first in 1972. Now, there are some changes externally to the watch relative to the 15450, and it starts with the case, which has broader bevels on its shoulder to create the impression of a more massive watch. We also have a more dramatically tapered bracelet, where the taper down from the lugs to the clasp starts and proceeds more dramatically. You can also see that the watch is a classical Royal Oak, meaning that the finish is a big part of what you're paying for. The faceting, the satination, the polish, the sharp breaks between them, polishing in places where you can barely even see it, like the ends of these intermediate links that have been polished inside of the bracelet. You can see that the channels between the links are broad to avoid pinching skin, pulling hair, or constraining the movement of the bracelet, which is silky and yet precise. And there's a perfectly aligned bevel that runs down the flanks of the individual links. You can see removable links here are fixed in place by screws, not pin sleeves here. This is an upscale way of doing it. It's the AP way of doing it. We have a combination of polishing and satin on the links, and then media blasting and satin inside the clasp, which has a double deployant action with twin trigger release and thick gauge swing arms and chassis. This really feels like a clasp that's rugged enough to be used on an offshore, and you can see it as a sequential close with the AP logo closing on top of the opposite side. Now, jumping back to the case, you can see the character line of the bezel continues through the mid case and through the case back. The bracelet is held to the case using screws and bars, more secure than a spring bar. That's what I always like to see, solidity. Screws and bars, the right way to make an expensive watch. You can see how complex the case assembly actually is with all of its different parts and the way they go together. The bezel gasket is expressed as a hairline styling element, never as overt as on the offshore. Nevertheless, it has been an element designed to be seen since the very first Royal Oak, the totality of which was inspired by the design of a vintage diving helmet. You can see the white gold bolts, and they are bolts in the bezel, are hexagonal, and so is the AP logo crown. The watch is 50 meters water resistant, but like the Jumbo, it's 50 meters water resistant with a push-down crown, so I do not recommend swimming with this mid-size model. Take it off first. You can see the bezel is complex. Outboard, there's a narrow satin band, then a polished primary facet, then a top. It's got a very small polished top, framing each one of the individual bolts, and then a lip around the edge, but for the most part, we're looking at brilliant cut and hand-set diamonds. Each diamond is held in place using a white gold setting, and the diamonds are graded so the carats, clarity, and color are identical, so there's no gradient or shift from gem to gem. You can see that the inner bezel has been mirror polished to reflect light in dramatic ways. We will turn off the lights so you can see how well loomed the watch is, and it is quite well loomed. As you can see, the dial features the Grande Tapisserie. It is the large, though not the biggest hobnail. The biggest is the Mega, but the Petite and the Grand, which we have here, are still cut traditionally on reductive pantograph mimicry lathes. So you can see that micro texture across every hobnail and then in between, supposedly 20,000 dots on each dial. That's created the old-fashioned way using 19th century technology. The difference now is that the dials are coated using a PVD to get a more consistent blue with a lower rejection rate. Changes to the dial, yes, there have been a couple. For the 15550 and 15551 we have here. We no longer have the automatic script on the dial, the idea being if you've bought the watch, you already know what you bought, you don't need advertising. And although we have an Audemars Piguet marquee, we don't have the AP logo. That's gone to free up the dial. All of the indices, although made of gold, are rhodium plated for higher contrast. And then we have a gold logo, and rather than simply being stuck in place, it's actually a metallized buildup of white gold that creates the letters. We have a date disc that is blue to match the dial. The watch does have hacking seconds, and it also has a quick set date, so you can rapidly cycle the date if you wish to do so. Flipping it all over, we have a high horology movement, but it's a high horology movement from an unexpected source. This is actually the AP 5900. It's a Vaucher movement, and Vaucher is a high-end movement maker that's actually the movement arm of Parmigiani Fleurier. This is an automatic winder with a 60-hour power reserve, a 4 Hz beat rate, the shock tolerance of a full balance bridge and a free sprung balance, pivots on 29 jewels, and as you can see, it perfectly fills the case back of this watch. The rotor is the most artisanally finished piece. As you can see, it features sharp interior angles where these inner bevels meet, and each one of those sharp creases is very difficult to achieve. The fact that you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm continuing because the number is outrageous. This is a beautifully hand-finished rotor. It features black polish, satination, beveling, interior angles. The rest of the movement is less obviously artisanally finished. The bevels are mechanical. The striping is handsome, but not particularly broad or luminous. There's engine turning on the base plate. Everything is neatly, competently, and frankly, price appropriately applied. This feels like an upscale movement. So while it's not quite hand-finished to Romain Gaultier levels, nevertheless, it definitely looks its price. And again, Vaucher is about as good as it gets. Some movement suppliers, the likes of Zenith, Vaucher, Jaeger-LeCoultre, it's the kind of movement you imagine being inside an Audemars Piguet and belonging there. Reach out to Team Osso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details of this Royal Oak 15551 midsize.